The day I almost lost everything started with a cup of coffee I never got to finish. I was standing at the kitchen counter at 5047 in the morning, the way I always do, right hand wrapped around my mug, left hand on the counter, watching the backyard through the window while it was still dark enough that the porch light made the oak tree look orange. My wife Dorothy used to say I looked like a man waiting for the world to start. She wasn't wrong. 63 years old and I still couldn't sleep past 5:30. Dorothy passed 4 years ago. Breast cancer. We had 31 years together. And I'll tell you right now that not a single day goes by that I don't reach for the phone to call her about something small. A bird I saw. A news story she would have hated. The way the light comes through the kitchen window in October and makes everything look golden. But that morning I wasn't thinking about Dorothy. I was thinking about my son. My son. I'll call him by what he was to me, which was simply my boy, my only child, had called me the night before to tell me he and his wife were flying in from Phoenix. Said he had something important to discuss. His voice was flat the way it gets when he's nervous. He's 34 years old and he still can't hide anything from me. I asked him what it was about. He said, "Just some financial stuff, Dad. Nothing bad." I believed him. That's the part that still sits with me. My boy has struggled. I don't say that with judgment. I say it the way you say the truth about someone you love, when you finally stop protecting the story. He dropped out of college after 2 years, picked up some construction work, married his wife Renata when he was 26. I liked Renata at first. She was sharp, organized, the kind of woman who sends thank you notes within 48 hours. But somewhere in the last few years, something changed. She started looking at my house differently. Not at the rooms or the furniture, at the square footage, at the neighborhood. I own a home in Decatur, Georgia. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths on a corner lot that I've had since 1998. I paid it off 11 years ago. I also have a retirement account, a life insurance policy, and a modest investment portfolio my financial advisor and I built up over 20 years of careful, boring decisions. I was an operations manager for a logistics company for 30 years. Not glamorous, but solid. Dorothy and I lived below our means our entire lives, so that when the time came, we'd be comfortable. That's the thing about comfortable. Other people can see it from the outside. My son and his wife arrived Thursday afternoon. I made pot roast because it was his favorite growing up. He hugged me at the door and held on a second longer than usual. I noticed, but I didn't say anything. Renata kissed me on the cheek and said the house smelled wonderful. She was wearing a blazer on a Thursday afternoon to come to her father-in-law's house for pot roast. I noticed that too. We ate and talked about nothing important. The drive from the airport, the traffic on 285, a neighbor's dog that had been barking all week. After dinner, my son asked if we could sit in the living room. His wife pulled out a manila folder. That folder. I can still picture the exact color of it. They wanted me to sign a financial power of attorney. Not just any power of attorney. One that would give my son full authority over my accounts, my property decisions, my investment portfolio. Renata did most of the talking. She used the word streamlined 4 times. She said it was just in case something happened. That they were worried about me living alone, that it would be so much easier for everyone. I asked if they'd had this drawn up by an attorney. My son looked at his hands. Renata said a friend of theirs had helped them find the template online. I told them I'd think about it. That night I lay in bed for 2 hours, staring at the ceiling. Dorothy's side of the bed still has her pillow. I don't wash the pillowcase anymore because the smell is gone, but the habit of not touching it remains. I stared at the ceiling and I thought, why now? Why Thursday? Why the blazer? Why 4 times did she say streamlined? I didn't sleep. The next morning I called my attorney, a man I'd worked with for 15 years. His name is Gerald, and he is the kind of person who speaks slowly on purpose because he wants you to hear every word. I described what had happened. He was quiet for a moment, then he said, "Don't sign anything. Come see me Monday." I said I would. But Saturday changed everything before Monday came. My son called at 8 in the morning to say he and Renata were heading to Piedmont Park and did I want to come. It felt like a peace offering. I said yes. We met at the parking lot off 10th Street and walked to the fountain, the three of us like a normal family on a normal morning. Renata was wearing sunglasses and she kept checking her phone. My son was trying, I could see him trying, making small talk, pointing out a dog, asking about my neighbor's renovation project. Then everything changed in about 90 seconds. A woman came toward us from the direction of the parking lot. She was wearing a City Parks Department vest, a cap, and she had a radio clipped to her hip. She looked at me and then she looked away, and then she looked back at me and said, "Excuse me, sir, are you by any chance visiting from out of town?" I said, "No, I live nearby." She said, "Could I speak with you privately for just a moment? I think I have you confused with someone. I apologize for the interruption." She was very calm, the kind of calm that's practiced. My son said, "What's this about?" The woman glanced at him and smiled. "Just a quick thing, sir. I'll have him back to you in 2 minutes." She walked with me about 30 feet toward a bench near the water fountain. She spoke low and steady. "My name is Agent Cheryl Odom. I'm with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. I'm going to ask you to trust me for the next few minutes." She showed me a badge, moved it quickly, but close enough that I could see it was real. "Your son and his wife are under investigation for elder financial fraud. We've been monitoring a pattern of behavior for several weeks. We believe they may attempt to have you sign documents today that would give them control of your assets." I didn't say anything. She said, "I know this is a shock. I need you to go back to them, act completely normal, and when they ask you to sign anything, tell them you left your reading glasses in the car. That's all. Can you do that?" I think I nodded. I'm not sure. My body went very still the way it does when something is too large to process all at once. I thought about the manila folder. I thought about the blazer on a Thursday. I thought about the way my son wouldn't look at me when Renata used the word streamlined. I said, "How long has this been going on?" She said, "Long enough. We have phone records and financial documents, but we need to see if they follow through today. Go back to them. You're safe. I promise." I walked back across the grass. The sun was bright. A kid was flying a kite near the hill. Everything looked exactly the same as it had 5 minutes ago, and nothing was the same at all. My son smiled when I came back. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I said. She thought I was someone's grandfather from her church. Renata laughed at that. I watched her laugh and I felt something cold move through my chest. We walked another 20 minutes. Then my son said he'd left something in his car and why didn't we sit near the pavilion? He came back with a messenger bag. He and Renata sat across from me at a picnic table and he pulled out a second folder, different from Thursday's, thinner, more official looking. Renata said they'd had a paralegal review the document. It was just the power of attorney from before, she said, slightly revised. She slid a pen across the table to me. I looked at the pen. I looked at my son's face. He was looking at the table. I patted my jacket pockets, then my shirt pocket. Then I said, "Lord, I left my reading glasses in my car. Let me go get them." My son said, "Dad, you don't need your glasses. It's the same document. We can read it to you." "You know I can't sign anything I haven't read myself," I said. "Your mother trained that into me." "I'll be right back." He didn't argue. I walked back toward the parking lot, steady and slow, like a man who is simply going to get his glasses. Agent Odom was standing near a gray sedan. She gave me a small nod. She said, "You did great. We have everything we need. Go back to them and we'll approach in about 5 minutes. Stay calm." 5 minutes felt like an hour. I sat back down at that picnic table with my son and his wife and I made conversation about nothing. I talked about the weather. I talked about the kite. I talked about how Dorothy used to bring a blanket to this park in the fall and grade her students' papers outside. And then 3 people in plain clothes walked across the grass toward us and everything that came after happened very quickly. They took my son and Renata to separate vehicles. My son looked back at me once, just once. I don't know what his face was trying to say. Maybe it was sorry. Maybe it was something else. I've turned that look over in my mind 100 times since, and I still don't know what to do with it. Agent Odom stayed with me for almost an hour after. She explained what they had found. My son had taken out a personal loan 6 months ago using my name and address, not my signature but a document he'd been building a case toward. They had texts between him and Renata discussing my accounts, the value of my house, what they would do once they had access. They had a phone call where Renata said, "Once the POA is signed, we move fast. He won't even know what happened." She said that about me, about a man who made pot roast for her on Thursday. I asked Agent Odom how they had found out. She said a fraud alert had been flagged by my bank when someone ran an inquiry on my credit using my information without a hard pull. My bank's fraud department had contacted the GBI. The whole thing had been moving quietly for 3 weeks. 3 weeks while I was watching the backyard in the morning and talking to a ghost and not sleeping and thinking. Something was wrong, but not knowing what. I drove home alone that afternoon. I sat in my driveway for a while before going inside. The oak tree in the backyard was the same as it always is. The porch light was off. It was the middle of the day. I thought about calling someone. My brother out in Memphis. My neighbor Patricia. No, wait, wrong story. My neighbor Cynthia, who'd brought me casseroles every week for a month after Dorothy died. I thought about calling someone and telling them what had happened, and I couldn't figure out where to start. How do you start that sentence? My son tried to steal from me. My son sat across a picnic table from me with a pen and a folder. My son looked back at me once, and I still don't know what his face was saying. I didn't call anyone. I went inside. I sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee. The one from that morning had gone cold, and I sat there until it got dark. Gerald, my attorney, came over Sunday morning. I hadn't told him the full story yet, just that something had happened, and could he please come. He sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad the way he always does, and he listened to everything without interrupting, which is another thing I appreciate about Gerald. When I finished, he put his pen down and was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You know this means there will be proceedings. It will be uncomfortable." I said I knew. He said, "And your relationship with your son." I said, "I know." He didn't push it further. He's good like that. The charges they filed were elder financial fraud, identity fraud, and conspiracy. Renata had been the architect of most of it, the investigators said. My son had been, and this is the word they used in the documents, a willing participant. Not coerced, not manipulated. Willing, that word has taken up permanent residence in a corner of my mind. I don't think it's leaving anytime soon. I've thought a lot about what I did wrong. Not in the moments at the park. I think I handled that as well as a 63-year-old man can handle being told his son is trying to rob him. Before. What signals did I miss? When did the boy who used to fall asleep in the back seat with his hand in mine become someone who would slide a pen across a table? I don't know the full answer. I've turned it over from every angle and I still don't know. Somewhere money and desperation and a wife who saw a corner lot in Decatur and thought about square footage. Somewhere all of those things came together into something that came apart across a picnic table in Piedmont Park on a Saturday morning in October. What I do know is this. Dorothy would have caught it sooner. She had a radar for need dressed up as love. She used to say the difference between someone who loves you and someone who needs you is easy. The person who loves you asks what you need. The person who just needs you tells you what you need. Renata spent 2 days telling me what I needed. My son was sentenced several months later. I didn't attend the sentencing. Gerald said I didn't have to. I wrote a statement that the judge could read, which said that I loved my son and that what happened broke something in me that I didn't know was breakable. I also said that love was not a reason for the court to go easy. I meant every word of both sentences. His wife took a plea. She's serving less time. She and my son are no longer together. That I did hear through Gerald, not that it brought me anything resembling satisfaction. I updated my will. I updated my beneficiary designations. I have a new financial power of attorney that names Gerald and my brother jointly, with checks and balances the way it should have been all along. Gerald did it right. Actual attorneys, actual witnesses, actual thinking. I also called my bank and set up additional fraud alerts. The young man who helped me on the phone was very patient. He said, "Is there anything else I can help you with today?" And I almost said, "Can you tell me how to stop feeling like the world's biggest fool?" But I didn't. I thanked him and I hung up. There is a woman at my church named Dolores who lost her husband 2 years ago. She and I have started taking walks in the evening sometimes, nothing more than that. Just two people who understand what it feels like to reach for a phone to call someone who isn't there anymore. She doesn't know the full story yet. Someday I'll tell her. Last week we were walking and she asked me if I was doing okay. Not fine okay, but actually okay. I thought about it for a real moment instead of giving the automatic answer. I said, "I'm getting there." She said, "That's honest." I said, "My wife trained that into me too." Dolores laughed. It was a real laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere unexpected, and I thought, not for the first time and not in a dramatic way, just quietly, the way real thoughts tend to arrive, that Dorothy would have liked her. I still stand at the kitchen window every morning, right hand on the mug, left hand on the counter, watching the oak tree. The porch light makes it look orange when it's still dark. I still reach for the phone sometimes to tell Dorothy about something small. But I'm also more careful now about the difference between love and need. About who asks and who tells. About manila folders and blazers on Thursdays, and the particular flatness in a voice that says it's nothing bad when it means something else entirely. My son is allowed to write me letters from where he is. I have received 2. I have not responded to either one yet. I'm not sure what I would say. I'm not sure I owe him a response. I'm also not sure I don't. What I am sure of is this. I'm still here, still standing at the window, still watching the oak tree turn orange in the dark before the world starts, still here. And that, right now, is enough. I've spent a lot of time since that Saturday trying to figure out what the right word is for what happened. Betrayal feels too dramatic and not dramatic enough at the same time. Loss is closer. It's the kind of loss that doesn't announce itself with a funeral or a phone call. It just shows up one morning when you're standing at the kitchen window and the world looks exactly the same as it always did, and something inside you is quietly, permanently different. Here's what I've come to understand about cause and effect. Not in any mystical sense, just in the plain human sense that every choice builds something or tears something down. My son made a series of choices over what the investigators told me was at least 8 months, each one small enough to justify, each one leading to the next. A loan inquiry here, a conversation there, a manila folder, a blazer on a Thursday, a pen slid across a picnic table. None of those things happened in a vacuum. They were constructed, one careful piece at a time, by 2 people who had decided that my comfort was their opportunity. And I made choices too. I chose to believe nothing bad when I heard flatness in a voice I've known for 34 years. I chose not to call Gerald on Friday instead of waiting until Monday. I chose, for a long time before any of this, to give without asking questions, to help without setting limits, to love in a way that left no room for honesty. I don't say that to punish myself. I say it because it's true, and the truth is the only thing I've found that actually helps. What saved me wasn't luck. It was 30 years of living carefully enough that a bank flagged an irregular inquiry on my credit. It was 15 years of trusting an attorney named Gerald who told me slowly and clearly not to sign anything. It was Dorothy spending 3 decades teaching me that love asks and need tells, and that difference, small as it sounds, turned out to matter more than I ever imagined it would. The moral is not that children are dangerous or that trust is foolish. The moral is that wisdom earns its name slowly and only through paying attention, not suspicious attention, just honest attention. The kind that notices a blazer on a Thursday, the kind that hears flatness in a familiar voice, the kind that asks, quietly, in the dark at 5:30 in the morning, why now? I'm 63 years old. I have a paid-off house on a corner lot, an attorney I trust, and a neighbor named Dolores who laughs in a way that comes from somewhere unexpected. I have a son I still love, even though I don't know yet what to do with that love. I have 2 letters I haven't answered. None of this is resolved. Real life doesn't resolve the way a story does. But I'm still standing at the window every morning, still watching the oak tree, still here, and being here, choosing to be present, careful, honest, and open to what comes next. That's not nothing. That's everything, actually. It just takes a while to see it that way.